context for the story is a civil war is brewing in the Metro. These factions have always been, if not at war, certainly certainly in conflict, whether through trade or one way or another. Matters are definitely coming to a head. The factions are mobilising, and you'll be thrust right into the centre of that situation. So you can expect to see a little bit more of the factions through the game. You know, if you understood how the weapons worked in the first game, you realise they were as deadly as any other. If you got a headshot, you were going to put someone down with one shot. We had some other systems that kind of clouded the issue. So lots of the enemies were wearing armour plating, and some of the New World ammo that was less powerful would harmlessly ricochet off. But we didn't really explain that to the player. It made a different sound, but not in the heat of battle, one that you could really pick up on. So for a lot of people, the weapons just felt like they didn't have the weight and heft that we actually wanted them to do. So a lot of the changes we've made in terms of how we communicate the power of the weapons to players. So much more environmental destruction. You'll see cover crumbling in front of you. If you miss your target, you'll see the tile shatter on the walls and so on and so forth. If you hit the target, you'll see sparks fly if it hits armour. You'll see that plume of gore if it hits flesh. We've improved our animation system beyond recognition, so they will reel back under gunfire. So the whole combat experience, we think, is much more satisfying and visceral this time around. You know, we had a few levels in the first game where you could blaze through and kill everyone, or you could stealth your way through and assassinate everyone, or if you wanted to, you could just ghost through and they would never even know that you were there. It was just quite difficult to do that. We want to give the player much more obvious and appealing routes where they can plan a stealthy approach, and for the stealth mechanics to be much more consistent, so they know what kind of action is going to give their position away, what kind of action will cause a distraction and attract the enemy, and just make the rules much more obvious and apparent. So actually in the example that you mentioned, he was doing two things. First, he shot away the logs from the fireplace to make it more likely to go out, and then shot the bowl which actually poured water over the fire. So not only did it attract his attention, it also put the fire out, so when you snuck up behind him and killed him, no one could see you do it. Metro has a really broad range of gameplay styles, and we focused on action within our demo simply because that's probably the biggest area of improvement and where we had the most, I think, valid criticism of the first game. And we really wanted to show that we've improved the combat, the stealth, the AI, so we picked a more action-oriented scene to show that off. But if you were fans of the original game and you loved the survival horror or the exploration of the stations, or those lonely moments when you were out on the surface with seconds left in your gas mask which was frosting over and 3 bullets left in your gun and mutants howling in the distance, absolutely we're going to have those moments there in the game as well. So we've chosen to pursue an original story that's come from the studio that is, I guess, the direct sequel to Metro 2033, and obviously we've had Dimitri's input. It takes place in his world, etc. But internally, before we landed on the name, we were just calling it 2034 because that was the easiest thing to do. I think that slipped out inadvertently, and as a result, when we finally revealed the final name, everyone, oh, they've changed the name, or no, this has always been an original story. Well, 2033 was the first outing for our 4A engine, which is 4A Games' proprietary in-house tech. And we think we did a pretty good job making a decent looking game on Xbox 360 at first pass. What we've added for Last Light is much more sophisticated lighting techniques, a whole range of dynamic physics and dynamic destruction, which you saw in the demo today, all of which is present in the Xbox 360 version, running silky smooth already. And to be honest, we can't wait to show you the console versions as well. But I think if you're an Xbox 360 owner, you'll be very, very happy with how this game looks compared to other games on the platform. We have some really exciting ideas made possible partly because of the world and the fiction and the really interesting weapon set that we have, these handmade improvised weapons, and then a lot of the possibilities afforded by the tech, the lighting and the destruction will translate to some really interesting multiplayer experiences that we're not quite ready to share with you now, but it's going to be a little bit different from what you're used to, we think.